welcome to this video. So today we're going to talk about how to draw an organic shape or form. In this case, we're looking at a leaf. We're going to consider the leaf, since it's fairly flat, as an organic shape. And we're going to talk about different approaches to sketching or drawing this leaf fairly accurately. So the first step is to do the line art and get the basic shapes and angles down. And one of the things I want to do is I want to see what are my landmarks that I can look at. Now, what is a landmark? A landmark is something that's easily identifiable. So in this case, on the leaf, I have this little triangle or V, and I have the branch that's coming off of it. And that's giving me a nice angle. And that's something that I can easily visually draw because I'm looking at what is that angle, and I'm doing the same thing on this side. What is this angle? And if I can accurately draw that angle in, that gives me a nice starting point. Before we draw, though, I want to talk about how do you hold a pencil. So a lot of you are used to holding a pencil here. You have a very limited range of motion and you have a heavy hand, which means you're going to make dark marks on your paper. So what you want to do is you just want to move back on your pencil about halfway, and that's going to give you a brighter range of motion and you're going to be a little bit more fluid. One thing to keep in mind, when I sketch, I normally don't draw this dark. I'm doing this simply so the camera can catch the image. Usually my lines are going to be somewhere around there. So these are my sketches before I clean up my lines and add my final marks. So again, hold that pencil back here. So now what we're going to talk about is negative space and what negative space is. In terms of art with my students, we've discussed how to identify negative space, what it is in paintings and illustrations. But right now what we're going to do is talk about how do we use negative space to draw. So one of the first things I need to do is establish my landmark, which I did. Now, if I take this, I can visually draw a straight line going across. Now, if you can't see it visually on your paper, if you aren't there with your eye yet, you can take a ruler and draw a very light line, something that you can easily erase. But where do I put my other lines at? So before I can draw a vertical line to line up some of my other parts of the leaf, I need to figure out how far out do I draw. So I look for another landmark, which I'm going to do right here. Now, when I'm trying to draw, I'm not trying to draw this. I'm trying to draw the shape that it forms with that horizontal line. I'm trying to draw this. And this is a very basic shape. It's not complicated at all. Now, if I can draw that, now I've accurately figured out how far out this goes. And I can use this measurement to see what are my relationships. And here's my next landmark. So I'll come in here and I'll draw another line. And again, I'm going to guesstimate. I could be off a little bit when I sketch it out, but that's fine. And I want to look at these relationships and the shapes that these make. So again, I have this shape, which I could break down into a basic triangle if I wanted to, or I could just look at what's going on right here. And I can draw this shape. So I'm using these points as landmarks. I'm looking to see what is the relationship, what is the shape that's being made. In this case, it's a trapezoid. So once I draw that trapezoid, right, with my focus right there, now I have the spacing between these 2 points and the relationship that they have together. And I'm basically just going to keep moving up. One thing to keep in mind, you might have to make adjustments. So when I look at this, I want to see what is this shape between these two and what is the relationship. And I can see how far they are from each other. So if I had to draw an imaginary line up, I know it's going to be about this far apart from that imaginary line. And again, I do this visually while I'm looking at my sketch. I don't necessarily have to draw that line. If you feel that you need to do something like that, you can, but I would try not to. Draw lightly and be aware that you're probably going to have to make corrections afterwards. So I want to look at this shape. Here's a nice little landmark because you have this little divot. I'm going to erase right here so you guys can see it. So see this little point sticking out right there? That is a great landmark. I got a nice little hook. Before I get that, I want to draw this shape here. And then there's, looks like a little bird almost, like a bird's head right here. And I want to draw that shape. Once I get that shape, then I'm just going to kind of visually look at it and see what my spacings are. What's my relationship from this height to that height. And I'm just going to basically guesstimate, understanding that at the end of the process, when I go through and look at it, I might have to make adjustments and just erase some parts and then redraw it. And that's okay. So now I look at, see, okay, what are some of my other shapes or triangles? And what I see here is this is a much shallower triangle than what I drew. This probably should come out a little bit more at an angle here. And this definitely should come out a little bit flatter here. Now the spacing between the two is fine. It's just that it should be a little bit shallower or a little bit lower. But it's okay. It's a small adjustment that I could leave or make later. Now, one of the glaring mistakes I have is right here and right here, this triangle. And there's a perfectly easy explanation for this. I ran out of room. So because I ran out of room, I used my sketchbook. I had to make a slight adjustment here and just fake it. Now, technically, this should probably come right about here, and then this leaf is here, and then it's going to be much flatter out here, and then I'll get that triangle. But I can't do that because I ran out of room. Here's the thing though, unless you're going to show the leaf and someone's going to do a side-by-side comparison, no one's going to know. You're the only ones really going to know. So your focus is draw it as accurately as possible because we're trying to build a skill set. But understand you might have to adapt due to something like your surface. Once you have your overall shape, your outline done, what you want to start doing is indicating some of your interior lines or your contour lines. And again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. We want to look at our landmarks. So the one major landmark I have is this line right here. And I can easily see what that angle is, right? I can easily make that angle. And then I have all kinds of landmarks. So here I have this line that's curved and it's coming right here towards the base and it's forming this V. I also know that this line is going to be right here, so I can simply draw that in. And now I'm just playing connect the dots. I can then look and see, okay, what's the spacing here? And I can draw that line right there. And I know I should have that space and I have this space. When I'm drawing this line, again, I want to see where does this go in relationship to here. And then you can see this other line pop up. Now, I have an easy shape that I can identify and say, okay, that's going to start here and it's going to shoot up. And I can see what the space and relationship are. And I know that this goes to this point, so I can just continue to where that point is, because this is another landmark. I have another line here, and it's going right where this V is. So again, I can draw it, and I have yet another triangle. And I'll just keep going through this. I know that this line is here, and it's following, so I can come here and draw that line. I know that that line's coming at an angle here, so I can draw that. Now on the paper, this probably should have gone a little bit higher up, so what I did was I made a little bit too big of a curve. So what I can do now is I can go back and fix this line. This line right here is fairly accurate. I know it's coming from this little divot here, which is right there. So I can draw that line coming down. And it comes right here, and I got another triangle or another V. And again, you can just use all these little visual cues to draw, and you're going to see where those lines are. So these lines are really light. This is how I normally draw, this light. This way I can make my corrections and I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to give you your next tip of advice. So I want this to be at more of an angle. I see it starts a little bit lower. So I'm going to draw this angle here. And then I see that it's going to come across in here and then back up to this line. So I can now come through and erase this, and I have my correction, and now this is more accurately drawn to this right here. Which brings me up to one of my next points. When you're going to make a correction because you think you drew a line at a wrong angle or you think you drew the wrong shape, make your corrections first and then erase. The biggest mistake a lot of people do when they start off drawing is they erase their mistakes and then try to redraw. And they find that they drew the exact same line they just erased, and they keep doing it over and over again. And now you have this big mar on your paper. Ugly mark, a mar. Well, if you already know that's your mistake, leave it. Use that to correct yourself and make your adjustments and draw the line that you do want. Once you have the line that you do want, then you go back and erase, and that's why you want to draw lightly. What else have we looked at? We talked about the triangles, we talked about finding your landmarks. So let's do a recap of everything that we did for drawing this. So, number one. Yeah, we're going number one here. Move back on your pencil. All right, so move back on your pencil gives you a greater range of motion. So move back on pencil. That's number one. Number two, okay, and this will mean you'll be more fluid, but you want to draw lightly. So let's go draw lightly. Number three, find and use landmarks. And again, landmarks are areas that are easy to define and easy to see. This is why when things have more detail, they're easier to draw because you have more visual cues of where to put your lines at. When something is very basic and doesn't have a lot of detail, that means you don't have a lot of landmarks, you don't have a lot of visual cues, which makes it harder to draw. Okay, number four. Okay, use negative space to find your shapes, and that's going to help you with your distance and your angles. And what I'm talking about is when you draw that shape, okay, it's going to help you find what this distance is from this point to this point. It's also going to help you find your angle that you see. So you don't have to draw some of these lines like your horizontal and vertical lines. You can do it visually with your eyes and then just look and see, okay, if I have an imaginary line there, what's my shape going to be, and draw that. So I'm going to recap to make sure we have all of this because my handwriting's kind of bad. Number one, move back on your pencil. Number two, draw lightly so you can make your corrections and then erase. Number three, find and use landmarks to draw. Those are the easy identifiable areas. 4, use negative space to find your shapes between different landmarks. That'll help you find your relationships between your widths and your heights or your angles. And then the last thing, and I almost forgot, so let's put this on at the very top. Number 5. Okay. Make corrections before you erase. Because what happens is you start making the same mistake over and over again, and you get frustrated and you ruin your drawing. So again, use your mistakes that you see and use those to make the corrections and then erase. So that's it for the video. The next video we're going to talk about is rendering. And now we're going to be looking at values and textures when it comes to that video. Have a great day.